Hello and welcome to English 112 Composition 2. This is part 2 of the video that is recorded or was recorded on June 15th, 2016. In this video, I want to extend my conversation about the thesis supporting paper, but I also want to talk a little bit about your discussion board post in relationship to grades, and also talk a little bit about the rhetorical situation and how having a sense of the rhetorical situation will help you write your thesis supporting paper. So the first thing that I want you to become aware of is the discussion board post. So as you can see in the discussion board post is that pretty much if you complete the discussion board post, you get full credit. The only thing that, I'm a stickler about in the discussion board post is that if you don't really extend your ideas or you're not really providing specifics. And in that case, I'll usually, take down, it's a difference between getting an A or an A minus. But when you do your discussion board post, you want to be sure that you are thorough and you want to be sure that you provide examples. In the discussion board post number 2 and in discussion board post number 4, those are very sort of involved discussion board posts in the sense that A, you post your rough draft of your paper, and B, you give responses or you give feedback to your fellow students on their rough draft. So basically, when I look at your discussion board post number 2 and when I get ready to look at your discussion board post number 4, I'm looking for two things. I'm looking to see that you have uploaded your rough draft, and I'm also looking to see that you have responded thoroughly to your partner's paper. So what I don't want you to do when you respond to your partner's paper is to have a list of responses saying it was good, it flowed well. But I really want you to look at your partner's papers. Look at your partner's papers in conjunction with the samples that I've given you too. So think about the samples that I've given you. Think about the Matt and Cassidy's paper as samples that I've given you for the thesis supporting paper, and then compare that to the rough draft of your partner, and then ask yourself what sort of grade would you think Joe would give this paper, and sort of let that guide the feedback that you give to your partner when you post on the discussion board in response to your partner's rough draft. If you go back to the discussion board number 3, you'll see, however, that I've responded to everyone's thesis statement. And for that reason, I wanted to be sure that everyone is on the right track in regards to writing their thesis statements. Now, please be aware that everyone, if you participated in discussion board number 3, you received an A. I am not going to mark you down for not having sort of the best or the most clear thesis statement, because we are in the process of learning how to create thesis statements. So think about discussion board 3 as a starting point to create thesis statements. And if you completed discussion board 3, you basically got credit. The part that you want to think about with discussion board 3 is that you want to make sure that you go back and that you carefully read my feedback, because based off of the feedback that I gave you in discussion board number 3, I am going to be looking at your final paper like a hawk to make sure that your thesis statement in your thesis supporting paper is actually a thesis statement. So please keep aware that if you do not have a well thought out thesis statement, a well developed thesis statement that includes a claim and a reason, then that's going to basically compromise your entire paper, because you want to think to yourself that without that thesis statement, you don't have this guiding idea, you don't have this guiding position that's going to support all of the research that you bring to the table. Again, if you wanna think about how important a thesis statement is, ask yourself, I'm going to tear this paper apart, or I'm going to burn this paper. What's the one sentence? What's the one statement that I'm going to save? What is the one statement that is going to capture everything that I'm doing that is going to give my reader a sense of the problem, the solution, and the research that I'm providing to address the problem with the solution. So keep in mind, that as you are developing your thesis statement, and again, go back and review not only my feedback that I've given you in discussion board post number 3, but go back and review all of the feedback that I've given of the students, because you will learn about thesis statements by looking at what I wrote in other students' posts and compare that to what you're seeing in your post. And again, I encourage you to ask those questions that you might have about your thesis statement so that we can help develop it a bit more. Now, when I talk about audience, I also want you to be aware of the rhetorical situation. One of the things about 112 that a lot of students have a difficulty with is being able to inhabit this sense of academic discourse or academic language. And so what I've done is that I've put a link on eLearning about the rhetorical situation. And when you're thinking about the rhetorical situation, you want to consider things such as the stance that you're taking, the audience that you're referring to. You want to think about the mode in which you're writing. You want to think about the purpose of your writing. And all of this is going to be described in the actual link that I've provided on eLearning about the rhetorical situation. But even in its more complex philosophical sense, we think about the rhetorical situation from the aspect of Aristotle's idea of the 3 emotional appeals, which is pathos, ethos, and logos. And so when we think about pathos, we think about how do we use language to appeal to our audience's emotions. When we think of logos, we're thinking of how do we use logic, how do we use research, data to appeal to our audience's emotions. And finally, when we're thinking about ethos, we're thinking about the credibility of the writer. So in one sense, the language that you use, the citations that you include, the academic sources that you include will enhance your ethos, your credibility. Because this is a research paper, because this is academic in nature, you don't want to use a whole bunch of emotional language that's filled with pathos, because you're not necessarily appealing to emotions, but rather you're appealing to the logic, and you're using data to support your paper, or to support your position. And this goes back to you'll see in the thesis supporting paper assignment sheet when we're talking about the difference between analysis and synthesis. So in one sense, in your thesis supporting paper, I'm looking for you to analyze. I'm looking for you to break down information. But the difficult part in this paper will be your ability to synthesize. And to synthesize means that you are taking the information that you have broken down and you are telling your reader how this information supports your thesis statement. That's why the thesis statement is so important, because throughout the paper, you are going to be continuously coming back to your thesis statement as you synthesize your information. Now, this sounds overwhelming at this point, but this is why creating an outline is crucial. Because when you create an outline, you can, at the top of your paper, write your thesis statement and then plan out how you're going to analyze and synthesize information to back up that all-important thesis statement. So coming back to the rhetorical situation in terms of audience, you want to think, and they're going to describe this in the link that I give you, is that even though I'm your reader, you are not just writing for me. Think about the feedback that I give you is that I'm speaking for a general audience. I'm having you think about your larger audience in your paper. So you want to avoid second person pronoun references such as you. When you use you, you're giving a command, like I'm telling you not to use you, because I'm specifically speaking to you as my students. Another pronoun reference you want to avoid like the plague is first person plural references like we or our. You want to refer to your audience in the third person because your audience is a general audience. When I say general audience, sorry, I have to get online again. When I say general audience, think about the Delta College community. Think about students, professors, and administration. This is who you're turning in your paper to. Some people have a sense of your subject. Some people are well versed and specialize in your subject. So you want to be able to make that sort of rhetorical move between general to specific, and this is where the writing and the drafting and the revision and thinking about the rhetorical situation becomes extremely important. So make sure over the course of the next few days, as you are completing the discussion board post, as you are writing your rough draft to your thesis supporting paper, that you go back and that you review those links carefully, and also make sure that you review the new links that I'm going to post on the announcements page. And make sure that if you have any questions or comments about the materials, or if you're having challenges in the research, writing, drafting, revision process, please do not hesitate to either post to the discussion board post or send me an email. Or again, this is where the writing consultants at the Ritz Center will be extremely helpful. So again, happy reading, happy writing. If you have any questions or concerns, let me know, and I will see you in cyberspace.